Welcome to Echoes Carved by the Ancestors, the land of forgotten carvings and stories carved into time itself. Here, we revive the echoes of those who came before us and bring their untold stories back to life.
The people of Illyrian believed that the world had never belonged to humankind alone. Long before cities reached toward the clouds or kingdoms carved their names across distant lands, the earth breathed with a quiet rhythm shared by every living thing. Rivers carried not only water, but memory. Mountains stood not merely as stone, but as silent witnesses. Forests whispered lessons older than language, while birds carried songs that few could still understand. Above them stretched the celestial sea, where the stars were said to travel upon invisible currents, each light bound to another by threads no eye could see. The elders taught that every dawn arrived because harmony endured between the heavens above and the earth below. Should that harmony ever fail, both realms would suffer. Few imagined such a day could come. For countless generations the seasons followed one another faithfully. Rain arrived when fields thirsted. Snow rested gently upon the mountains before melting into streams that nourished the valleys. Great forests blossomed without fear, while deer wandered openly beneath towering trees whose roots reached as deeply into the earth as their branches stretched toward the sky. The people honored this balance rather than ruling it. Hunters thanked every animal that fed their families. Farmers offered the first grain of every harvest back to the soil. Children learned the names of rivers before they learned the names of kings. Wisdom was measured not by wealth, but by understanding. Honor belonged not to those who conquered others, but to those who protected life. Among every generation arose gifted teachers, healers, navigators, and guardians who carried fragments of ancient knowledge entrusted to them by their ancestors. Together they formed the circle of keepers, men and women chosen not by birth, but by humility, patience, and compassion. Yet even the circle possessed only pieces of a far older truth. They spoke often of one whose return had been promised, the guardian between worlds. Some believed the guardian had once walked among the people before disappearing beyond the horizon where earth touched the stars. Others believed the guardian had never truly left. Instead, they said, the guardian waited until creation itself required protector once more. Children listened to these stories with wide eyes beside evening fires, wondering whether such a being could truly exist. Adults smiled kindly, believing the tales offered comfort more than prophecy. Only the eldest members of the circle remained silent whenever the stories were told. Silence, they believed, sometimes carried more truth than words. Far beyond the fertile valleys rose the heights of Styrian. Unlike ordinary mountains, these peaks gleamed faintly each night as though moonlight had become trapped within their stone. Travelers who climbed their slopes often returned changed. Some discovered extraordinary courage. Others found peace after years of sorrow. A few returned unable to explain what they had seen, except to say that the sky had spoken without sound. No temples crowned these summits. No palaces stood upon their ridges. Only silence, only wind, only endless stars. Near these sacred heights lived a young guardian named Kaelen. He possessed neither noble birth nor remarkable wealth. His family tended mountain orchards where silver-leaf trees grew among crystal springs. From childhood, he preferred wandering quiet trails rather than joining competitions held in nearby villages. He watched birds longer than most people considered sensible. He memorized the paths of rivers. He could predict storms simply by observing how swallows changed their flight. Many believed such habits peculiar. His grandmother believed otherwise. The world speaks, she often told him. It has never stopped speaking. Then why do so few hear it? Kaelen once asked. She smiled. Because they wait for loud voices. She gently placed one weathered hand upon his chest. The greatest truths begin here. Kaelen looked downward. My heart. No. She smiled again. The place where courage chooses wisdom. He never forgot those words. Years passed. Kaelen grew into a skilled ranger whose responsibility was simple. Protect the mountain passes. Guide travelers safely. Prevent needless harm. He carried no jeweled sword, no royal banner, only a polished ash staff carved with flowing lines that resembled winding streams. He preferred ending disputes before they became battles. Many laughed that he spoke to frightened animals before speaking to angry men, yet somehow both often calmed. Even wolves seemed less fearful in his presence. The elders quietly noticed. One autumn evening the first sign appeared. It began as a single streak of brilliant fire crossing the northern heavens. Unlike ordinary meteors, it moved slowly. Its glowing tail shimmered with changing colors, gold, blue, crimson, and white. Every village watched. Children cheered. Old storytellers fell silent. Then another appeared. Then another. By midnight the heavens blazed with countless rivers of living fire. They crossed one another without collision, weaving patterns no astronomer had ever recorded. The celestial fires had awakened. Across the kingdom bells rang without command. No festival had been planned. No celebration announced. Yet everyone stepped outside. Even the animals stood strangely still. Birds gathered upon rooftops despite the darkness. Deer emerged from forests without fear. Owls watched silently beside sparrows. Predator and prey alike seemed to listen. Kaelen climbed alone toward the highest overlook. Above him the sky shimmered like an ocean filled with flowing light. He felt neither fear nor excitement, only an overwhelming certainty that something immense had begun. The wind ceased. Every leaf became still. Then came the voice. It spoke without sound, not through his ears, through memory. Balance weakens. The words echoed inside him. Darkness gathers where pride forgets honor. Another silence followed. The protector must awaken. Kaelen searched the empty mountains. No one stood nearby. Yet the presence remained. Warm, ancient, patient. Before him the air itself began to glow. Thousands of tiny lights drifted together, spiraling slowly until they formed a radiant circle suspended above the stone. Within that circle appeared a single symbol, a spiral. It turned gently, neither beginning nor ending. The sight filled him with awe impossible to describe. As he watched, the spiral drifted toward him. He stepped backward instinctively. The light continued. It touched the center of his chest. No pain came, only warmth, a warmth unlike fire, unlike sunlight. It felt alive. The spiral vanished beneath his skin. Kaelen staggered backward. He looked down. Beneath his clothing, a faint golden glow pulsed once, twice, then disappeared. The mountains became silent once more. The celestial fires continued flowing overhead as though nothing unusual had happened. Had he imagined everything? He touched his chest. His heartbeat remained steady. Yet something had changed. Deep inside, he sensed every living thing surrounding him. The roots beneath the stones. Birds sleeping among distant branches. Water flowing beneath the mountain. Even the slow breathing of the earth itself. For the first time in his life, he understood what his grandmother had meant. The world had always been speaking. Tonight, he had finally learned how to listen. The following morning, strange events unfolded across the kingdom. Flowers bloomed weeks before their season. Long dry springs overflowed. Migrating birds altered ancient routes. Serpents emerged peacefully from hidden places, basking beneath sunlight without aggression. Meanwhile, elsewhere, shadows lingered longer than they should. Crops in distant provinces failed overnight. Clear streams became strangely clouded. Animals abandoned familiar territories. Arguments among neighboring rulers grew increasingly bitter. Small disagreements became violence. Pride spread faster than reason. The circle of keepers gathered for the first time in 12 years. Their oldest member, Elder Saren, placed an ancient star map upon a stone table. Every constellation appeared unchanged, except one. A new path of light now crossed directly through the center of the heavens. He closed his eyes. The fires had returned. One keeper whispered, "The old prophecies." Another finished quietly, "When light and darkness weigh equally upon creation." Saren nodded. The guardian between worlds walks again. Across the mountains, Kaelen stood alone beside a crystal spring. Unaware that his ordinary life had ended, he gazed into the still water. For an instant, the reflection looking back at him was not entirely his own. A faint spiral of light shimmered beneath his chest. Above his head, delicate branches woven from living light briefly spread like the crown of a great tree before fading into the morning air. A small white bird landed quietly upon a staff. Moments later, a slender serpent emerged from the grass and rested peacefully beside his feet. Neither creature showed fear. Neither fled. Kaelen looked from one to the other in silent wonder. High above, the celestial fires continued their slow passage across the endless sky, unseen by most beneath the brightness of day. The balance of creation had begun to shift, and with it, the first steps of the greatest protector the world would ever know. Chapter 2. The Keeper Beneath the Great Oak. The white bird remained upon Kaelen's staff long after the morning sun had climbed above the eastern ridges. It neither searched for food nor sang. Instead, it watched him with calm, intelligent eyes, as though waiting for him to understand something that could not be spoken aloud. The slender serpent rested nearby, its scales reflecting flashes of silver and emerald beneath the sunlight. It showed none of the wary movements wild creatures usually displayed around people. Kaelen lowered himself carefully onto a smooth stone beside the spring. "You're not afraid of me." The serpent slowly lifted its head. The bird answered first. With a graceful sweep of its wings, it rose into the air and circled above him exactly 3 times before gliding toward the southern valley. It did not fly quickly. It waited, almost inviting him to follow. Kaelen smiled to himself. So this is how the world speaks. He stood, tightened the leather straps around his travel pack, and began walking after the bird. The serpent slipped quietly through the grasses beside the trail. By midday he reached a meadow unlike any he had ever seen. Wildflowers covered the hillsides in colors that shifted with the breeze, creating the illusion that the earth itself breathed beneath a living blanket of blossoms. Dozens of birds perched upon ancient trees surrounding the clearing. Not one called out. Even the wind moved gently, as though honoring the place. At the center stood an enormous oak whose branches stretched farther than any tree Kaelen had ever witnessed. Its roots disappeared beneath the hillside like the arms of a mountain embracing the earth. Waiting beneath its shade sat an elderly woman dressed in flowing robes the color of river stone. Her long silver hair reached almost to the ground. She neither appeared surprised nor curious. Instead, she smiled as though greeting someone expected many years before. "You took longer than the birds predicted." Kaelen blinked. "You know me? I know of you." She motioned toward the grass. "Sit." He obeyed. The serpent curled peacefully beside the old woman's feet. The white bird settled upon one of the oak's lowest branches. "You've been waiting." "For many seasons." Kaelen frowned. "For me?" "For the one who carries the living spiral." His hand instinctively rested against his chest. "You know about that?" The woman laughed softly. "My child, I spent 70 years waiting for its return." She introduced herself as Elder Lyra, once a member of the Circle of Keepers before choosing a quieter life among the sacred valleys. "I left because wisdom grows louder when pride grows quiet." Kaelen found himself smiling. His grandmother would have liked her. Lyra reached into a woven basket and removed a polished wooden bowl filled with clear spring water. She placed it between them. "Look." Kaelen gazed into the water. At first he saw only his reflection. Then the image began to change. The faint golden spiral beneath his chest appeared once more. This time it glowed brighter. From his shoulders rose delicate branches woven from living light. Birds gathered among them as though nesting within a great tree. Around the spiral coiled a radiant white serpent whose scales shimmered like flowing rain. The image slowly expanded. Behind him appeared forests, rivers, mountains, animals, children, entire villages. Everything seemed connected by countless golden threads leading back to the spiral. "What is this?" Lyra answered quietly. "It is what the world sees when it looks at you." Kaelen looked away from the bowl. "I am only a mountain ranger." "No." She smiled gently. "You were." The afternoon passed beneath the great oak. Lyra spoke not of prophecies, but of responsibility. "The greatest mistake people make," she explained, "is believing guardians exist to defeat enemies. What else would they do? They protect what should never become an enemy." Kaelen considered her words. "The forests, Yes. The rivers? Yes. The people? Yes. She nodded, but also anger before it becomes hatred, pride before it becomes tyranny, fear before it becomes cruelty. Kaelen sat quietly. I don't know how to do those things. That, Lyra said warmly, is precisely why you were chosen. He looked confused. I don't understand. Those who believe they already possess mastery seldom seek wisdom. For 7 days, Kaelen remained beneath the ancient oak. He learned no secret spells, no magical incantations, no techniques for defeating armies. Instead, Lyra taught him to observe. Every morning they watched birds greet the dawn. Every afternoon, they followed streams until they reached hidden springs. Every evening they listened to the changing voices of insects as darkness settled across the valley. Mastery begins with attention. One day she pointed toward a pair of hawks circling overhead. What do you see? They're hunting. No, they're riding the wind. The next day she asked about a fallen tree. It died. No, it became shelter. Later she asked him to watch rain falling across a hillside. It feeds the flowers. No, it also shapes mountains. Each lesson revealed something larger than its beginning. Gradually, Kaelen stopped searching for answers. He learned instead to ask better questions. Far away, beyond the eastern kingdoms, another story unfolded. In the vast dominion of Kerith, Lord Varric stood before an army unlike any assembled in generations. His soldiers wore polished bronze armor. Their banners stretched across the plains like fields of crimson grass. Thousands cheered his name. Varric had once been admired. He protected villages from raiders. He united divided provinces. He built roads connecting distant cities. But victory had changed him. Each triumph convinced him that greater victories alone could preserve peace. Soon every neighboring kingdom appeared not as allies but as obstacles. Every disagreement became a challenge. Every challenge demanded conquest. His advisors praised ambition. His generals rewarded strength. No one dared question him. As the celestial fires crossed the heavens, Varric saw not a warning but an opportunity. The sky itself blesses expansion, he declared. His court applauded. Only one person remained silent. An elderly astronomer named Kaelen quietly folded his charts. My lord, Varric looked impatiently toward him. What is it? The fires do not celebrate. They witness. Varric laughed. The heavens admire strength. Kaelen lowered his eyes. The heavens admire balance. That same night a shadow appeared beyond the borders of Kerith. It possessed no face, no armor, no weapon. It moved through abandoned ruins like drifting smoke. Wherever it lingered, resentment deepened. Old grudges returned. Neighbors distrusted neighbors. Families argued. Leaders became suspicious. No one saw the shadow directly. Instead, they simply believed their anger had always belonged to them. Darkness rarely announced itself. It merely whispered. Meanwhile, Kaelen's lessons continued. One evening, Lyra handed him a simple seed. What is its purpose? To become a tree. She shook her head. It may never become one. He looked puzzled. It could be eaten. It could dry out. It could wash away. She smiled. I asked its purpose, not its future. He stared thoughtfully at the tiny seed. Finally he answered, to carry possibility. Lyra nodded with quiet satisfaction. The world has begun teaching you. On the morning of the 8th day, the white bird suddenly flew into the sky. This time it did not circle. Hundreds of birds emerged from every direction. Then thousands. Eagles, doves, ravens, swallows, herons. Birds that rarely shared the same skies now flew together in perfect harmony. They filled the heavens like living clouds. Kaelen looked upward in amazement. What does it mean? Lyra's expression grew solemn. They have received the summons. The summons? The circle of keepers is called every guardian remaining in the 4 realms. She slowly stood. The balance has weakened faster than anyone expected. A deep rumble echoed across the valley. Not thunder, something older. The great oak trembled. Leaves of silver and green drifted gently around them. The serpent lifted its head toward the eastern horizon. Far beyond the mountains, a crimson glow stained the sky despite the clear afternoon. Kaelen felt warmth spread through the spiral within his chest. For the first time, the living symbol pulsed not gently, but urgently. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Lyra rested a weathered hand upon his shoulder. The days of learning had begun to meet the days of choosing. Kaelen watched the crimson light spread slowly across the distant horizon. "I don't feel ready." She smiled kindly. No true guardian ever does. Above them, the countless birds wheeled together beneath the celestial fires, their wings catching golden light, as though the heavens themselves had entrusted them with a message. The season of quiet preparation had ended. Ahead lay the first true test, not of Kaelen's strength, but of his honor, wisdom, and the courage to preserve harmony in a world that was beginning to forget it. Chapter 3. The Circle of Keepers. Morning arrived beneath a sky unlike any the elders could remember. The celestial fires no longer appeared only after sunset. Faint rivers of gold and silver shimmered across the blue daylight, so subtle that many mistook them for high clouds. Yet every creature seemed aware that something extraordinary had changed. Birdsong began before dawn. The rivers flowed more swiftly. Even the oldest trees creaked softly as though awakening from a long sleep. Kaelen and Elder Lyra left the sanctuary beneath the great oak before sunrise. Neither spoke for many miles. The white bird glided ahead, never straying far from the trail, while the silver serpent traveled quietly beside them through grasses jeweled with morning dew. Finally, Kaelen broke the silence. "Where are we going?" "To the circle." "I thought the circle came to those who were called." Lyra smiled. "They do. But sometimes those who are called must first walk the road that teaches them why." Their journey led through valleys where every village carried its own traditions, yet all shared the same growing unease. In one farming community, neighbors argued over water that had always been shared freely. In another, merchants who had traded honestly for decades suddenly accused one another of deceit. Elsewhere, lifelong friends refused to speak over small misunderstandings that seemed impossible to explain. Kaelen watched each encounter with quiet concern. "The darkness spreads." Lyra nodded. "It rarely arrives with armies. It begins inside ordinary hearts." As they continued, Kaelen noticed something else. The trees nearest angry villages had begun shedding healthy leaves. Streams reflected dull skies, even beneath brilliant sunshine. Birds avoided rooftops where harsh voices gathered. Nature itself responded to the choices of humankind. "The land feels what we become," Lyra said. "It always has." 3 days later they reached the Valley of Four Rivers. There stood the Hall of Keepers. It was unlike any palace or fortress. No walls surrounded it. No gates barred its entrance. Great pillars of white stone rose from living gardens, their surfaces carved only with flowing lines that resembled water, branches, clouds, and stars. Open to every direction, the hall welcomed wind, birds, rain, and sunlight equally. Harmony, the elders believed, should never be hidden behind walls. Waiting there were 12 keepers. Some were young. Others carried centuries of wisdom upon weathered faces. Each wore robes embroidered with symbols representing the lands they protected. Elder Saren stepped forward. His silver eyes rested upon Kaelen. "So, the spiral has returned." Kaelen bowed respectfully. "I don't know why it chose me." Saren smiled gently. Neither did the last guardian. The assembled keepers invited Kaelen into the circle chamber. Instead of a throne, 12 simple stone seats surrounded a polished floor of white granite. At its center lay an inlaid spiral formed from dozens of different stones gathered from every corner of the world. No single land completed the design. Only together did the pattern become whole. Sarah motioned toward it. "Stand in the center." Kaelen obeyed. The instant his feet touched the heart of the spiral, the symbol within his chest awakened. Golden light spread beneath the granite floor. The entire chamber glowed. Lines of light traveled outward like flowing rivers, connecting every keeper standing around him. Above them appeared shimmering images, towering forests, snow-covered mountains, golden deserts, rolling oceans, Every landscape joined together by threads of living light. Gasps echoed around the chamber. Several keepers lowered their heads. Others smiled through quiet tears. The living bond. One whispered, "It has awakened." When the light faded, silence remained. Finally Saren spoke. "You have seen the world as it truly is." Kaelen nodded slowly. "Everything is connected." "Yes. The rivers, the forests, the people, the stars, the smallest kindness, the greatest sacrifice." Saren smiled. "Mastery begins a moment that truth can never again be forgotten." That evening, a great council gathered beneath the open sky. Messengers arrived from distant kingdoms carrying troubling news. The eastern provinces prepare for war. The northern forests burn without lightning. Fishing villages report strange tides. Entire flocks abandon ancient nesting grounds. The stars no longer follow expected paths. Each report deepened concern among the keepers. Finally, Elder Mira, keeper of the western seas, stood. "What do the celestial fires mean?" No one answered immediately. Instead, Elder Saren turned toward Kaelen. "What do you think?" The young guardian hesitated. Everyone watched. Finally he spoke. "They are not here to frighten us. They are reminding us." "Of what?" He looked upward. "That even the heavens must remain in balance." A quiet smile spread across Saren's face. "Good. You answer with observation, not assumption." Later that night, Kaelen wandered alone beyond the gardens. The celestial fires shimmered brighter than ever. They crossed the heavens like countless rivers flowing toward an unseen destination. As he watched, the white bird landed beside him. Moments later, the silver serpent emerged from nearby stones. Neither made a sound. Then something remarkable occurred. The bird lifted into the air. The serpent rose upon a sunlit boulder. Instead of moving separately, they began circling one another in perfect harmony. Air, earth, sky, life. Neither dominated, neither yielded. Each completed the other's movement. Kaelen suddenly understood. Balance. The creature stopped. The spiral within his chest pulsed warmly. For the first time, he realized the guardian's purpose was not to stand above nature. It was to live within its harmony. Far to the east, Lord Varric's armies marched. Thousands of soldiers crossed green valleys beneath banners bearing the golden hawk of Kareth. Villages surrendered without resistance. Most believed peace would follow. Instead, each victory demanded another. Every conquered border became the beginning of a new campaign. General Torrin approached Varric one evening. "My lord, we have secured 3 provinces." "Excellent. The men request time to rebuild the villages." Varric stared toward distant mountains. "If we stop now, our enemies recover." Torrin hesitated. "They are no longer enemies. They surrendered." Varric's expression hardened. "They surrendered today. They may resist tomorrow." Behind him, unnoticed by all, the drifting shadow lingered among the tents. Its silent whispers settled into every fearful thought. Soon soldiers began distrusting neighboring regiments. Captains questioned loyal commanders. Brothers argued over imagined insults. Darkness required no swords, only suspicion. Back at the Hall of Keepers, Kaelen's education entered a new stage. Each elder offered a different lesson. Elder Mira taught him that oceans possess patience greater than mountains. They never hurry, yet they shape continents. Keeper Doran led him through forests where fallen trees nourish new life. Nothing worthy of honor exists for itself alone. Elder Talon, a shepherd from the high plains, spoke of flocks. A leader walks where all can follow. He does not ask others to face dangers he avoids himself. Every lesson carried the same quiet truth. Power was never the destination. Character was. One afternoon, Kaelen discovered a young deer caught beneath the roots of a fallen tree. Its leg had become trapped. The frightened animal struggled harder each time he approached. Rather than forcing it free, Kaelen sat quietly several steps away. He waited. Minutes became an hour. Gradually, the deer's breathing slowed. Its fear eased. Only then did Kaelen gently lift the heavy branch. The animal stepped free. Instead of running, it paused, For a brief moment, it looked directly into his eyes before disappearing into the forest. Watching from nearby, Elder Lyra smiled. You passed. Kaelen looked puzzled. I wasn't being tested. Weren't you? She continued walking. The quickest answer is seldom the wisest one. That evening, as twilight settled across the valley, an enormous flock of birds gathered above the Hall of Keepers. Thousands upon thousands filled the sky. They circled once, twice, 3 times. Then every bird turned east simultaneously. Silence followed. Even the wind seemed to stop. A lone raven descended into the center of the circle garden. Tied gently around its leg was a strip of blue cloth. Elder Saren carefully removed it. His expression grew grave as he read the embroidered message. The eastern watchtower has fallen. No battle, no storm, no explanation. Only one final sentence. The darkness no longer hides. Every keeper stood. The season of preparation was ending. The time had come for the guardian of the living spiral to leave the safety of the circle and walk into a world where honor would be tested, wisdom would be challenged, and the first true choice between victory and compassion awaited beyond the eastern horizon. Above them, the celestial fires burned brighter than ever, illuminating the path toward a destiny that none of them, not even the elders, could fully foresee. Chapter 4. The Guardian's First Journey. For the first time since receiving the living spiral, Kaelen stepped beyond the lands protected by the Circle of Keepers. He did not travel alone. Elder Lyra walked beside him, carrying only her weathered walking staff. Above them, the white bird soared effortlessly from current to current, while the silver serpent disappeared and reappeared among the grasses as though it knew every hidden path across a world. The keepers offered no army, no royal escort, no banners. Saren had simply said, "The world already has enough people carrying weapons. What it needs now are those willing to carry hope." Those words remained with Kaelen as they journeyed east. Several days later they arrived at the Eastern Watchtower. Once, it served as a place where travelers from many kingdoms exchanged news, food, and stories before continuing their journeys. Now it stood abandoned. No walls had been broken, no gates burned, no signs of battle scarred the stone. Yet silence filled every corner. Birds refused to land. The nearby stream flowed strangely slow, despite the steep hillside. Even the wind seemed reluctant to enter the courtyard. Kaelen knelt beside the ancient stone well. He placed one hand upon its weathered rim. The spiral within his chest glowed softly. Almost immediately images formed within his mind. He saw frightened faces. He heard angry voices. Neighbors accusing neighbors. Friends refusing to trust one another. No swords. No monsters. Only fear. When the vision ended, he slowly stood. There was no attack. Lyra nodded. They abandoned one another. Inside the watchtower, they found scattered belongings left behind in haste. Half-finished meals, children's wooden toys, travel journals, warm cloaks hanging where their owners had expected to return. Everything suggested ordinary life interrupted by invisible division. Kaelen opened one journal, lying upon a table. The early pages described peaceful trade between distant villages. The final entries changed. They're hiding something. I no longer trust them. We should leave before they betray us. The handwriting grew increasingly hurried. Then it simply stopped. Kaelen quietly closed the book. The darkness convinces people they have always been alone. Lyra looked toward the empty doorway. That is why it is so dangerous. As evening approached, voices echoed from the nearby forest. Kaelen and Lyra followed cautiously until they reached a clearing, where 2 groups of travelers faced one another across a narrow bridge. Both wished to cross. Neither would yield. The argument had lasted hours, perhaps longer. Neither side remembered how it had begun. One merchant shouted, "They insulted us first." Across the bridge, an older woman answered, "No, we simply asked for time to cross." Children hid behind wagons. Oxen grew restless. Fear spread with every raised voice. Kaelen stepped calmly onto the bridge. Both groups fell silent. One merchant frowned. This doesn't concern you. Kaelen smiled gently. Perhaps. He looked down into the river flowing beneath them. Tell me, if this bridge disappears, who wins? The travelers exchanged confused glances. No one. He nodded. Exactly. He sat cross-legged in the center of the bridge. The argument stopped entirely. What are you doing? Waiting. For what? For someone to remember that crossing a bridge matters less than keeping one. Minutes passed. The silence became uncomfortable. Finally, an elderly farmer sighed. My wagon can wait. Another traveler nodded. So can mine. Soon both groups laughed quietly at themselves. The bridge filled not with anger, but with helping hands guiding wagons safely across. As the last child crossed, Kaelen noticed something remarkable. The nearby trees seemed greener. Birdsong returned. The sluggish river resumed its natural pace. Harmony restored the land itself. Lyra whispered, "The guardian heals more than people." That night, they camped beneath towering cedars. A fire crackled softly between them. Kaelen stared thoughtfully into the flames. I didn't defeat anything today. Lyra smiled. You defeated the desire to create enemies. He considered that. It felt small. She gently stirred the fire. The roots of the greatest trees are hidden. Far away, Lord Varric stood upon the walls of his newest fortress. Another kingdom had surrendered, another banner lowered, another victory celebrated. Yet satisfaction escaped him. Each conquest seemed to leave an emptiness demanding another. General Torn approached quietly. My lord, our people grow weary. We have doubled our lands, tripled our wealth. Still you prepare another campaign. Varric answered without turning. If I stop, we become vulnerable. Torrin lowered his eyes. My lord, there will always be another border. Behind them the shadow drifted silently across the battlements. Its whispers grew stronger, not louder, stronger. Trust no one. They envy your strength. They will take everything you built. Varric believed the thoughts were his own. Elsewhere the circle of keepers watched the heavens. The celestial fires had begun forming a vast spiral stretching across the night sky. Never before had the elders witnessed such a pattern. Elder Saren carefully studied ancient star records preserved for centuries. None matched. Finally he spoke. The heavens are gathering. Keeper Mira looked concerned. For battle? Saren slowly shook his head. No, for judgment. The following morning Kaelen and Lyra reached the Valley of Whispering Reeds. The valley had once been famous for its music. Whenever the wind passed through the tall grasses, thousands of reeds produced gentle melodies unlike any crafted by human hands. Travelers journeyed from distant kingdoms simply to listen. Now, silence. The reeds stood motionless despite a steady breeze. Kaelen stepped among them. He listened carefully. Nothing. The valley felt afraid. He knelt and placed both hands upon the earth. The spiral awakened. Warm golden light spread beneath the soil. Images returned. He saw years of harmony. Festivals. Children dancing. Musicians laughing. Then, one harsh season. A wealthy lord claimed ownership of the valley. Fences divided the fields. Travelers were turned away. The reeds no longer sang because no one gathered to celebrate them. The valley had forgotten generosity. Kaelen opened his eyes. The music isn't gone. It is waiting. Together they walked to the nearby village. Its people greeted strangers cautiously. An elder stepped forward. The valley no longer belongs to everyone. Kaelen asked gently, who decided beauty could belong to one person? The villagers looked at one another. No one answered. The village children, however, quietly slipped beneath the old fences and began running through the reeds. Their laughter echoed across the valley. One reed swayed. Then another. A faint note drifted through the air. Soon hundreds answered. Within minutes the entire valley sang once more. The fences had not fallen, yet their meaning already had. The village lord watched from his balcony. Instead of anger, he felt something unexpected. Shame. He ordered the gates open before sunset. Again the land responded. Flowers opened. Birds returned. The valley's ancient melody flowed across the hills for the first time in many years. Lyra smiled knowingly. The world remembers kindness. Days became weeks. Everywhere Kaelen traveled, he found the same invisible struggle. Not monsters, not invading armies, but fear, greed, pride, suspicion. Some villages required only a single conversation. Others demanded patient listening. Occasionally he failed. One mountain town ignored every warning. Families divided. Friends departed. By the time Kaelen returned weeks later, only empty homes remained. The loss weighed heavily upon him. I couldn't help them. Lyra answered softly. A guardian offers light. He cannot force others to open their eyes. For the first time since his journey began, Kaelen understood that wisdom could not prevent every sorrow. Some losses became teachers. Others became promises never to stop trying. One evening, while crossing the high pass of dawn, the white bird suddenly cried out, not its usual gentle call, a sharp warning. The silver serpent lifted itself high upon a rock, staring toward the eastern sky. Kaelen followed their gaze. The celestial fires had changed. Their flowing rivers no longer moved peacefully. Dark ribbons now twisted among them, spreading like ink through clear water. Above the distant horizon, one brilliant star disappeared. Then another. The heavens themselves had begun to lose their balance. Lyra's expression grew solemn. It has begun. What has? She looked toward the growing darkness. The shadow has stopped whispering. It has started acting. Far beyond the mountains, bells began ringing from villages Kaelen could not yet see. Smoke rose against the fading sky. The first great trial of the guardian of the living spiral had arrived, not merely to restore peace between neighbors, but to stand between an encroaching darkness and a world whose unity was beginning to unravel. Without another word, Kaelen tightened his grip on his ash staff and started toward the eastern horizon, where both victory and heartbreaking loss awaited, and where his greatest lesson in honor had yet to be learned. Chapter 5. When the Two Spirals Rose. The bells continued to echo across the eastern valleys long after the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Each carried a different rhythm. Some warned of danger. Others called families home. A few rang only once before falling silent. Kaelen and Elder Lyra walked through the night beneath the ever-brightening celestial fires. The rivers of light that had once flowed gracefully across the heavens now twisted around growing ribbons of shadow. It looked as though two unseen currents struggled for the same sky. The white bird flew higher than ever before. The silver serpent remained close to Kaelen's feet. Both sensed what words could not yet explain. By dawn they reached the city of Eridan. For centuries, Eridan had been known as the meeting city. Merchants from every kingdom traded beneath its wide market squares. Scholars debated openly in its gardens. Musicians filled its streets from sunrise until evening. Its greatest treasure had never been gold. It had been trust. Now the city gates stood closed. Citizens argued from opposite sides of the walls. Neighbors accused neighbors of theft. Craftsmen refused to sell to long-time customers. Even children no longer played together. Fear had become ordinary. Kaelen looked toward Lyra. This is worse than the villages. She nodded. The shadow grows stronger, wherever many hearts forget one another. The city council reluctantly allowed Kaelen to enter. Inside the great hall, 12 counselors sat around a circular table. Each blamed someone else. The northern district hoards grain. The southern merchants cheat honest buyers. The river guild refuses cooperation. The guards favor wealthy families. Hours passed. No solutions appeared. Only accusations. Finally, the eldest counselor turned toward Kaelen. You are said to be a guardian. Tell us who is responsible. Kaelen remained silent for several moments. Then he slowly walked to the center of the chamber. There stood a beautifully crafted bronze bowl filled with perfectly clear water. Without speaking, he gently stirred its surface. Instantly, every reflection shattered into ripples. He looked around the room. What do you see? Our reflections. They're distorted. He nodded. Who distorted them? No one answered. The water. Kaelen shook his head. The movement. The chamber grew quiet. When the heart is troubled, every face appears unfamiliar. When fear stirs a spirit, even friends seem like strangers. He allowed the water to become still once more. Every reflection returned exactly as before. No one here can restore the city alone, but together the waters can become calm again. Silence settled over the hall. Not uncomfortable silence, thoughtful silence. One by one, the counselors lowered their eyes. For the first time in many weeks, no one searched for someone else to blame. Over the following days, Kaelen walked every district of Eridan. He listened far more than he spoke. He visited blacksmiths, farmers, teachers, children, boat builders. He discovered that every disagreement began with a fear left unanswered. One merchant feared losing his family's livelihood. A fisherman feared the river would no longer provide. Parents feared their children would inherit uncertain futures. The fears differed. The loneliness was the same. Rather than giving speeches, Kaelen invited everyone to gather in the city's oldest square beneath a magnificent cedar tree planted generations earlier by the city's founders. At first, only a handful came, then dozens. Soon hundreds filled the square. Kaelen did not stand above them. He stood among them. This tree, he began, has survived storms, droughts, harsh winters, and fierce summers. Why? A young girl answered quietly. Because its roots are deep. Kaelen smiled. And where do its roots grow? An elderly gardener replied. Together, Kaelen looked around the gathering. The branches may reach in many directions, but the roots share the same earth. Slowly, conversations began. Old friends embraced. Merchants reopened trade. Musicians lifted forgotten instruments. Before sunset, laughter echoed once more through the streets of Eridan. The city had not become perfect, but hope had returned. That evening, Elder Lyra watched quietly from the cedar's shade. You did well. Kaelen shook his head. They healed one another. Exactly. She smiled warmly. A guardian reminds people of the strength they already possess. Far beyond Eridan, Lord Varric received disturbing reports. The city has refused your protection. They claim peace has returned. Varric slammed his hand against the council table. Impossible. They require order. His advisor hesitated. They found unity without conquest. The room fell silent. The shadow gathered behind Varric's throne. Its whisper became sharper. They reject you. They mock your strength. They will inspire others. Varric's jaw tightened. If they refuse my protection, they invite my army. General Torrin's face grew pale. My lord, Eridan has harmed no one. Varric looked toward the eastern horizon. They will. I simply arrived first. Meanwhile, the circle of keepers studied the heavens with growing concern. The celestial fires now formed two immense spirals. One glowed with brilliant gold. The other darkened steadily with drifting ash-gray light. Neither touched the other, yet both expanded. Elder Saren unfolded the oldest surviving star scroll. Its final passage had never before been understood. He read aloud, When the two spirals fill the heavens, the guardian shall not win by destroying darkness, but by preventing light from becoming pride. The younger keepers exchanged uncertain glances. Keeper Mira spoke softly. Can light become dangerous? Saren closed the scroll. When it forgets humility, it already has. Several days later, Kaelen and Lyra departed Eridan. Their next destination lay beyond the forest of seven winds. As they entered its towering pines, Kaelen noticed unusual silence. The forest was alive, yet no bird sang. No insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed hesitant. The white bird suddenly landed upon his shoulder. The silver serpent stopped moving entirely. Every instinct warned him. Someone watched. A young boy emerged from behind a fallen log. He could not have been older than 10. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt. He carried no weapon, only fear. Kaelen knelt. What is your name? Aaron. Are you alone? The boy nodded. My village sent me away. Why? They said strangers bring trouble. Lyra exchanged a quiet glance with Kaelen. Fear had now become so powerful that communities no longer welcomed those in need. Kaelen offered the boy food. Aaron hesitated, then accepted, as they shared a simple meal beneath the trees. The first bird sang, only one note, then another answered. Within minutes the forest echoed once more with music. Kaelen smiled. Kindness travels farther than fear. Lyra nodded, and faster. That night the three camped beside a clear stream. Aaron looked toward the glowing spiral, occasionally visible beneath Kaelen's tunic. Does it hurt? Kaelen looked down. No. What does it feel like? He thought carefully before answering. It feels like remembering something I never knew I had forgotten. The boy considered that. My grandfather used to say people carry little pieces of the sky inside them. Kaelen smiled. Your grandfather was wise. Just before dawn, the white bird burst into flight. The silver serpent coiled tightly. A deep tremor rolled through the earth. Far across the eastern plains, a brilliant tower of dark light rose into the heavens. Unlike smoke, it moved with purpose. The two celestial spirals above immediately responded. The golden spiral brightened. The dark spiral expanded. Across forests, rivers, mountains, and distant kingdoms, people looked upward in fear and wonder. Elder Lyra slowly stood. Her expression had become more solemn than Kaelen had ever seen. The shadow has revealed its heart. Kaelen tightened his grip upon the ash staff. Then we stop it. Lyra looked at him with quiet wisdom. No, we say what it is trying to make us destroy. Kaelen understood. This would not be a battle won through hatred. It would be a test unlike any before it. A test of honor over vengeance, compassion over fear, wisdom over power. And before the celestial fires finished crossing the sky, the guardian of the living spiral would face the greatest victory and the greatest loss of his life.
Thank you for listening to Echoes Carved by the Ancestors. This has been an interpretation of the petroglyph. Long after the celestial fires faded from the heavens, their light continued to burn within every heart that chose wisdom over fear, honor over pride, and compassion over conquest. The guardian of the living spiral became more than a hero remembered in song. He became a timeless example that true mastery is found not in defeating one's enemies, but in protecting the harmony that allows all life to flourish. Generations passed his story from elder to child, reminding each new age that victory and loss often walk the same path, yet courage, guidance, and selfless sacrifice leave a legacy that neither darkness nor time can erase. And whenever the stars seemed to drift a little brighter across the night sky, the people smiled, believing that the guardians still watched over the bond between the earth, the heavens, and every living soul, waiting patiently for the day the world would once again choose harmony over division. As with most prehistoric rock art, the true meaning is unknown, but archaeologists often interpret the symbols through recurring themes. To hear more stories from the ancestors, choose another story, explore one of our videos, or subscribe to our channel using the links on your screen.